Well, hello there, I'm Cass, and it's our 1 year anniversary since I've returned!
Yes, it's been quite a comeback for me this year. I've done a retrospective on one of my favorite series, started up 2 comparison shows that I've yet to make a second round on, and angered Zelda fanboys everywhere by doing this.
Ocarina of Time 3D, on the other hand, is a waste of time.
However, you're probably wondering, why did I even abandon the channel in the first place, or why did I even bother returning to it after a couple of years? Well, it's not that I didn't want to make more videos, but at the time I had to balance between friends, family, multiple school projects, getting into university, not to mention the fact that the mic and the editing software that I used was pretty awful at the time, leaving little to no time for me to develop any sort of skills for reviewing besides yelling in a mic and saying this is good or this is bad, or even time to edit it. But as I said in my top 10 games of 2012 I wished I played, what got me back into it all was the Operation Rainfall success in getting the last story in Xenoblade Chronicles brought over to the West, who I'd like to congratulate for getting the final of the 3 titles, Pandora's Tower, brought over to the West. Kudos, Operation Rainfall.
Last year, I returned with a review of the underrated classic for the DS, Dream Rift's Monster Tale. So I thought, for the occasion, I might as well take a look at another DS gem that just got overlooked by the public. Let's see, sorry, Mother once again to make sure that people know that I'm talking to myself. Oh! Perfect. Henry Hatsworth in the Puzzling Adventure. Tally-ho!
Henry Hatsworth was made in 2009 by one of the teams under the angelic logo of EA. Calm down, I'm only joking. The team eventually left those fiends to form Dream Rift, the studio behind the underrated classic Monster Tale in 2011. Yay! Who lost a lot of credibility by also making Epic Mickey Power of Illusion last year. Yep. P. Anyway, the plot goes like this. An old British explorer named Henry Hatsworth sets out to find a golden suit which will make him 20 years younger and could possibly make him the most classy man alive. Along the way, Henry and his apprentice meet up with another gentleman trying to obtain the legendary suit, and yeah, it's not worth going into more depth than just that. The story is more entertaining than Monster Tale at least, and sometimes the dialogue can be pretty funny, but Henry Hatsworth is no braid. It's enjoyable, but its story is nothing that you'll remember after turning it off. What you will remember is the unique blending of platforming and puzzling in Henry Hatsworth in the Puzzling Adventure. Henry Hatworth plays like a classic side-scrolling adventure, but like Monster Tale adding in an AI partner to the Metroid formula, Hatworth adds in a puzzle portion to the bottom screen. If you've ever played Tetris Attack, then you know the drill. Match up 3 or more consecutive same-colored blocks and clear the rows. In the case of Henry Hatworth, enemies transform into blocks when defeated and go to the bottom screen, where they need to be matched in order to defeat them permanently, which in turn fills up your super meter, letting you perform special moves and turn into a robot. At its best, Henry Hatsworth is reminiscent of classic Mega Man and Mega Man X title stages. In fact, some of the best stages have a similar design to the old Blue Bombers. However, one thing that can be a bit distracting is how similar this puzzling adventure is to the other titles Dream Rift made afterwards. Similar enemy attack patterns, moves, shots. It's almost eerie how similar they are in this one template, and yet so different that they are in other parts, and it does kind of make them seem like the gaming equivalent of a one-trick pony, though Henry Hatsworth has a slightly bigger issue than just unrealized potential or being just another throwaway piece of media to slap Mickey Mouse on. No, in the case of Henry Hatsworth, its notable flaw is its key mechanic. The puzzle portion of this game, while downright addictive on its own, is out of place and breaks up the action far too often from the top screen. The same goes for the beat-em-up section that the game constantly throws at you. It brings the pacing to its knees and takes quite a while to stand back on its own. It feels like they couldn't decide between a Tetris Attack knockoff or platformer and just met halfway. The system lacks the polish Monster Tale had, and it shows. Now, this dual-screen focus idea has been put to use and to great effect, I might add, on the DS. However, I find it works best when your focus is on both screens and not constantly switching up, down between the two. Case in point, The World Ends With You, where you're constantly focusing on both screens at the same time, and therefore your focus is in the complex battles on both fronts and not split between the two at certain times. Here, your gaze is constantly switching between the top and the bottom, and it breaks with the flow of combat and can be really disorienting. There's also the same unbalanced challenge that the game throws at you at certain sections, and some really cheap deaths in between, but still, it's kind of hard not to enjoy a game where you can play as a British tea-powered robot. If you can look past this issue, you blokes will have a smashing time with Henry Hatsworth, a good platformer with tons of variety, solid level design, and a fun little puzzle too thrown in for good measure.
Henry Hatsworth is quite the sophisticated gentleman, and his puzzling adventure is a game that goes quite well with a spot of tea. Yes. Quite well on you, Serraro. Good spot of tea.
The secret ingredient is love.
Finally, as always, the presentation. And really, there's not that much to say. I mean, just look at it. Hatworth's puzzling adventure has a lot of charm to it, as it's full of colorful and fluid sprite work, silly character, enemy, and puzzle designs which I really enjoy. And for 2009, it was a pretty solid effort for a new studio under Electronic Arts, which Dreamwidth would later top with one of the best looking 2D games on the system, Monster Tale. The music for each area fits, and for the most part is pretty catchy, but not exactly memorable at the same time, with one really enjoyably silly boss theme, which is the exception. Characters do have voices, but it's not full voice work. It's done in a style more reminiscent of Banjo-Kazooie. If you liked it then you're probably gonna like it here too. Heck, I didn't mind it. Overall, Henry Hatsworth in the puzzling adventure looks and sounds solid, just like the rest of the package.
You may have noticed throughout this year that some games have come with a number, whereas others have not. And that's not a mistake. See, when it comes to me giving a game a score, it's not about how good or bad it is, it's about how much I would recommend it on a scale of 1 to 10. In the case of, say, Ocarina of Time, Final Fantasy IV, pretty much any game that hasn't come out in the past 2 years, there's really no point in me applying anything to it but my own opinion. But since it is a special occasion, I guess I can break my rule to give Henry Hatsworth and the Puzzling Adventure a 7.5 out of 10. It's not as good as, say, Monster Tale, but it is one of the better platformers for the DS, and if you can get your hands on it, it is definitely worth the time and the money you spent on it. Well gang, it's been a fun first year, mostly covering handheld titles. But for the next year, hopefully we're going to get into more console games, a few PC titles, and even a time-traveling RPG you may have heard of called Chrono Cross. But before we get to all that, we got ourselves a little bit of an issue to resolve. I'll see you all in March. Until then, I'm Kaz, and game on, my friends. By the way, tell me what you think if I should stick with this room or go back to the couch. I do miss the couch though already.